Welcome to Behind the Book. It's time now for Behind the Book, hosted by Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion, two authors with a passion for books, no filters, and limitless curiosity. Join them now to find out the real story behind your favorite books and authors. And now, Behind the Book.
Welcome to Behind the Book. Today we're very excited because we have two fabulous guests. We've been looking forward to interviewing them ever since Tess and I met them at the NINC conference. The award-winning USA Today bestselling authors Nikoo and Jim McGoldrick are the writing team behind over 50 conflict-filled historical and contemporary novels and two works of nonfiction under various pseudonyms. Their stories have touched the hearts and minds of millions of readers all over the world. Their work has been translated into over a dozen languages and counting. Because of their success, they have been frequent guests on local and national radio and television. They make their home in California. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, we're so excited that you could make time for us. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you become writers and how did you decide to co-write your books?
I'll go first, and then Jim could give you the juicy parts. I was always a writer growing up, so forth. But then English is really my second language. So when I went to college here in States, so forth, I became an engineer because I didn't have my family around me. So for to me was to get a degree, was to get a job and support myself. And so I went to engineering school, and I'm aging myself, but it was at a time that it was only 2 women engineers in the entire program. And we didn't even have a bathroom, but that's a different story. So my writing and my love of writing, I pushed it in the closet because I didn't have time for it. And then, when Jim and I met, and go ahead, Jim, you could now tell your version of it.
Well, I always wanted to be a writer as well. I was that kid that wrote James Bond skits for the kids in the neighborhood. When I graduated from college, my goal was to publish a novel and row in the Olympics by the time I was 25. And neither of those things happened by 25. But luckily, I found Nikoo.
But so what happened was when we had children, we had our first son when Sai was born. At the time, we were both working in industry. I was an engineer and Jim worked in the production. We were in shipbuilding, and we had all these plans. Oh, we'll hire a nanny. We already had, a house in Newport and house in the Caribbean. Financially, we were doing quite well at that time. And when we had our child, we say, oh, this is easy. We'll just, this child will fit into our, lifestyle. And we took one look at our son and we knew we can't do it. We just could not do it. We could not have somebody else raise this child, everything. So our parents on both sides, they thought we absolutely lost our mind because we sat down and talked about it. And we said, one of our careers has to go. And how are we going to do so nobody feels stuck at home or they we were both very into our career, so forth. So at that time, Jim always talked about that he wanted to go and get his PhD. So Jim and I sat down and we said, okay, how about this? I'll go back and, I was an engineering manager then. We'll just cut our income in half and you go to graduate school and get your degree. And meanwhile, it's a lot less hours when you have a child in graduate school and balancing a family versus if both of you are working. So that's what we did. And so Jim started his PhD program.
One of the things that I wanted to do was creative writing. So there was a seminar that I took. The way it was set up, there was a dozen people sitting around a seminar table, and we wrote stories, and then we would bring them in, read them, and then go around the table and everyone would comment, and then the professor had the last word. I would write these stories, and Nikoo would read them.
And Jim and I always knew that someday in our horizon, or at some point in time, we both gonna pursue our writing again, because
Right.
I mean, our dates, when we started dating, we would go on these long walks on the beach and we talk stories. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the thing. This was our thing. When both of us were in, I mean, I was still in college, when again on our dates, we took a publishing seminar at Brown University, and we didn't do anything about it for 13 years, but that's what we did. So we always knew. So Jim would show me his stories or have me read it, and I would read them and I would say, Jim, the prose are beautiful. Your writing is gorgeous, but it's really, honey, piece of shit, because there is not a single character that I care about. We were very honest with each other. That was a secret to our relationship.
Yep. So anyway, I would take the stories in anyway, because I would say, okay, Nikoo's an engineer. What does she know? And I would read the stories, and we'd go around the table, and first person would say, oh, Jim, the prose is beautiful. Oh, the setting's wonderful. The action is great. But they'd say, but there isn't a character in this story that I could like. So I'd go home and tell Nikoo that they loved it.
And that's where we leave it up. So anyway, fast forward another 3 years, and Jim and Jim got his PhD, and he was teaching in Pennsylvania. We moved to Pennsylvania, and then I had a new engineering manager job, and our second son was born then. And just about the time our first son went to preschool, our second son was born, and he had some medical issues. And again, we came to that place in time that we couldn't do it. And I tried different things. You know, I went back to graduate school, tried to get an advanced degree in engineering. And then the first semester realized I hate my job. No, I'm going to get an advanced degree in the same thing. So anyway, so one winter, crazy winter.
Ice everywhere for week after week. I was getting ready to turn things in for my, it was publish or perish. So we had a magazine submission. There was a request for a contest. The only thing it had to do was the story had to do with Newport, Rhode Island.
New England, right? New England.
And Nikoo and I lived in Newport for 10 years while working and going to school.
So Jim pulled up one of his old stories and showed it to him. In my usual tact, again, I said, honey, just run it through the shredder. It doesn't work. So then he said, okay, could you do better? So I said, no, I can't. So we sat down next to each other.
Boy, that sounds very civil, doesn't it? I don't remember it being quite so civil, but...
So, hey, I worked in manufacturing in a shipyard. I had guys working for me. I was tough those days. So so we sat down next to each other. And Jim's story was about this guy that goes out during hurricane to save his boat, his cat boat that is tied in Newport Harbor. And so the story that we wrote together, it was an action story, beautiful. The story that we came up together was about a woman that goes out in this boat and she's contemplating her own life, because her entire past comes through this story, is the battles, the guilt she feels with her brother's death, and the relationship with her father, and the failed relationships, and so forth.
And she's going through this while this hurricane is pushing her toward oblivion. So
right. Anyway, by the time the story was done, we looked at each other and we were both stunned that it just something different came in, something beautiful for us. And so anyway, that story eventually won a second place in a national contest. And but before that,
before we even got the word back, I mean, we were done with it, and it was such a great experience that I said to Nikoo, "What do you want to do next?" So Nikoo, of course, always thinking small, says, we'll write a novel. And so I said, okay, so we're going to write a novel. What do you want to write about? And she said, well, you spent those years researching 16th century Scottish and English history and literature. Why don't we use that? And I was thinking that, well, let's see, 12 people read my dissertation. So yeah, maybe we could find more people to read a story.
We did. We sat down and we wrote a really synopsis and probably 3 chapters. We sent it out to the number of agents, and within 3 days, we had an agent. And
Really?
and she was, and right away when she called and she said, "I want the rest of this book," and we said, "Well, there is no rest of the book." She said, "I could sell it."
She said,
right fast.
Yeah.
Right. And she did sell it. So within 6 months, we had a really opportunity at that time that she came up with that we had 2 offers on the table. We had one from, at that time, was Simon Press for hardcover historical series. And then the second offer was from Penguin of a romance, historical romance. And her comment was, you write straight historicals the way Simon was proposing, you probably have a 5,000 print run at that time, so forth, versus again back then, this is mid 1990s, market was different. And she said, Penguin is already offering 100,000 print run, so we're like, but it will be mass market. And of course, we are thinking career here, so we said, let's go with Penguin. And that first agent really taught us how to write romance. She taught us, she was like our mother. She taught us, romance was like, to me, going to engineering school, reading romance was my escape. I would, leave an exam and come in and read my novels because that's what offered me that. So that's where we started.
So what was the title of that first book?
It was The Thistle and the Rose.
And when you said she helped you write it, did you send her drafts and she gave notes or?
No, she gave, like, she had ideas, is like, in the sense of on the professional side of things, she was very much a motivator in a sense of, she's no longer alive and, she passed away. She would have been like 100 years old now, but she was really at the end of her career when she picked us up.
But she knew everybody, and she was one of the founding people in Romance Writers of America back in the day. And she knew everybody, and she knew how the romance fiction business worked. So she kind of steered us in ways that were really productive for us.
Yeah, that's incredible. What a great opportunity. I think that's what a lot of authors wish they had when they started out, with somebody who knew the business and said, look, if you want to actually have a living doing this, here's what you should do. Yeah. Not write historical fiction, but write historical romance.
Right. And then again, of course, the problem was that she became so attached to us, over the years. We wrote a bunch of books that she represented. And then we were then looking for other kinds of stories to write, different audiences to write for. And she didn't want us to be potentially hurt or with rejection or whatever. So she kind of dropped the ball with us in a way, in her effort to be protective. So it became kind of time to move on. And we ended up writing contemporaries after that and a lot of other different things too.
Well, yeah, that brings me to our next question. You guys have written historical romance, suspense, mystery, young adult novels, nonfiction, and historical westerns. Everyone always tells authors to stay in their lane, and that is obviously not what you guys have done. Tell us how you make this work, and was it part of your overarching plan from the beginning, or did this develop over time?
We were not this is your 5-year plans. That's maybe, as human beings, some people embrace that, some people hate it. We are both I think, gypsies at heart in some ways. And we always feel like where the muse hits us, we have to go in that direction. And I think maybe it has to do with being two people. The stories that always came to us, we didn't write to market. You see, we didn't, like a lot of writers today, I think, are incredibly savvy, incredibly smart. They study the market and they really approach it as this is the business plan, and they go in and do it. We were two young kids that just were excited to do what we loved, and in many ways, I think having worked, we both of us held some very tough jobs, and I think because of that, we were just eager to write. And as soon as somebody says, these are the lines and color inside the lines, we both would scream, no, we can't do that. We have to color outside the line. So, and I think that's been kind of our life. It's like we've done, like moving to California. We were earlier just chatting about it, that, we lived always on the East Coast. And one day we, after taking so many trips to Southern California, we were like, okay, it's time to move. We're just going to pack the house and move to Southern California. And I remember our families looked at us and we were like, what's wrong with you? And we were like, well, that's the way we are.
It's still that way as far as our storytelling goes, right? I mean, we write historicals, romance, then we write as you said, we write these Nick James Westerns. And we were just talking about a contemporary thriller series 2 days ago, and now we're even thinking about something else. So really, it's whatever hits us, whatever story we want to tell at the moment, we just kind of dive in, and we figure, let the chips fall where they will,
And but the nice thing is, which is amazing now, the power we all have as writers today. We were tied in for many years, for decades, we were tied into what the publisher wanted. At some point, we had another agent that actually saw the question you asked, Tess. She actually thought that pattern about having two separate pseudonyms and two separate fields. At that time, we were writing for Penguin and Mira. We were writing historical romance and suspense thrillers. And she thought that was a very good business decision. And we started making a living at it very young in our career, because her feeling is it keeps the publishers honest, and you are, when you're giving you contracts, one knows there's somebody else always. So anyway, a lot of our work at that time, it really paid off. But today we know, all of us, again, you guys know that, you have to capture the readers, and you have to, series work, you want to really engage them long term. So we know a lot more now. We always thought of ourselves first as a storyteller. The genre came second. And a lot of our readers moved with us and they would read us from genre to genre to genre, because they liked the type of stories we were telling. And I think the craft and the storytelling, again, was always number one for us.
Did you find that writing in different genres was almost energizing, that you're doing something different?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Did. It definitely does. Jim and I, when it comes to process, we each take leads depending on the genre, depending on what is it we are writing and so forth. And I think it was really important, depending on the genre, it was necessary for one of us feel more in charge. And that's what happened, just recently when we were writing the historical Westerns. I mean, Jim always fights me on this, but I feel like I was helping him, as, they were genres like we wrote that he felt like one of our last women's fiction books came out when the mirror cracks. He felt that, he was helping me. We are complementing the other writer to basically achieve this thing. So in writing these different genres, that made both of us happy that, hey, this is what we are doing.
Now, you talked earlier about when you were writing the short story, you actually sat side by side. How does it work with writing novels? What's your process? Do you outline, or how do you do that?
So we have outlining has become just for our sanity. I think outlining, because when you got two people, I have a tendency, maybe it's the engineer in me. There are people that use software like Plotter or so forth. I'm kind of crazy because like all those things is in my head already. I just remember. But Jim,
Thank God she does.
Jim writes in a moment. Like he is more like, okay, I'm going to go out and write a scene that's going to involve this. He doesn't think what came before, what goes after. He really immerses himself in that moment. And so I think writing...
That's good and bad too, but it doesn't always make it the easiest for my partner.
But that's okay. That's why the delete button is for. But they... both of us. But then we have, but when it comes to working together, like every morning we have, before the project starts, we talk miles and miles and we plot it out and have, make these, write pretty much scene by scene, really detailed synopsis. Then we each take a scene every morning. You write this, I write this, we write them. We swap those scenes. And I was joking about deleting. He deletes my work, I delete his work. It's not always productive. We just like so attached to. Anyway, after many.
But the truth is, here's a trade secret. Nikoo keeps a copy of what she wrote and then puts it back in.
So then what we do is it does become a time basically that we said, this is it. Okay, deadline is calling. Then we still do. If a scene cannot be solved remotely, meaning from two separate computers, we sit next to each other and we are like, let's go over this. Let's just hash it out. Mm-hmm. And it does, always works.
And really the reason why that works is because early on we realized that because we were partners, the end product was just that. It was a product. And it was the product of both of us, our imaginations, our craft, our work. But it was something that it was collaborative and we had to try not to be too attached to unrevised work. And that's how it's worked over the last 25, 26, 27 years.
Well, you've kind of answered my next question, which was, how do you work with your spouse? Most of us can't imagine working with our spouse.
We do. We have had writing friends who will look at us and say, oh my God, I would stick needles in my eyes before I'd work with my husband. So there's no challenge though, right, Nikoo, working with me?
Not at all.
I think your ability to laugh, it makes me think that you're able to just make it work, and I noticed when you talked about Nikoo putting her section back in, she did not deny it. So I'm thinking that wasn't entirely a joke.
It wasn't.
So when it comes to research, how does that work for you? Do you do it ahead of time or do you do it as you go along, or one of you or the other of you? Is that
this is again on the point that we could laugh about it. I enjoy when we write something that is in a series, so we know at least we could get 2, 3, 5 books out of it, because any topic to Jim is an entire dissertation, his entire doctorate degree.
It's true. I do love research. I think if I wasn't a writer, I think I would be a research librarian somewhere.
We actually have writer friends that they email Jim and they're like, this, Jim, help me. And on top of his head, he's like, this is the answer. I like research, but I'm very, again, goal-oriented type of thing. Okay, I need to check this. There's the answer. Our family and our both sons, like our younger son, actually, he's about to be invited on Jeopardy. He passed all the things. Like he's a total info geek, the same as our older son. They are just, both of them are very much into games and Jeopardy and all that. Neither of them could touch Jim. I mean, Jim knows everything. When we have
Good
the
to know.
family
Next time I have a question on one of my historicals, I'm sending an email off immediately.
You're on.
it is amazing.
I'll get back to you in 2 years. 2 years with the answer. No, but actually, we even early on when we started, I spent years researching, the medieval Renaissance Scottish periods. But when you start to write, you realize how little you know. As a result, you have to keep researching. And but whenever we would start any new project, we would work at it, and we would both be doing the research. And then Nikoo would say, "Listen, we have to stop tomorrow or right now. We actually have to start writing."
The most stressful in dealing with readers, the most stressful thing we ever and we get tons and tons of really nice reviews, nice feedback. The most stressful thing a reader could do is challenge a historical fact on one of our books. All of a sudden, there's Jim McGoldrick. I have to take him. I have to take him for psychoanalysis after that to just remind them that it's okay. People could have rights. Yes, it's okay for somebody.
People can be wrong. People can be wrong. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, I totally understand because I get emails like that. I'm like, oh no, I know exactly what happened. I researched it for months. So back off.
But at the same time, I think we always said, like, no one knows history like historical romance readers. They know so much. It's about the cultural history and the social history of the time periods that they're interested in. I mean, even if some of it is sort of
fictionalized.
Yeah, because they read 2 novels, that present something a certain way, and then that becomes fact in their head.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'll tell you, we love writing and we love researching it. So, and sometimes I like answering criticisms.
Oh, everyone loves that.
Super fun. Yeah.
Do you ever find when you're reading books and you notice factual errors, does it jump out at you more than like the average reader?
Oh, yes. I think as writers, you two could probably attest to that. I mean, being a reader, in some ways, you've been ruined. Being a writer to be a reader, because you look for punctuation, you look for facts, you look for you look for line edits. You are like,
how could that character do that? That's impossible. Yeah, I think it's all about the characters, Nikoo.
I know. That's part of our argument too. Jim has missed that part of our. But, the book clubs is so funny. Over the years, I've been members of many book clubs, and many of them stopped inviting me because I would go in and I had too much opinions on everything that could be improved. So anyway.
Book clubs are kind of a mixed bag, I find. When I've gone to book clubs, I always love it because there's always one person that wasn't totally in love with the book. And you can they try to be nice about it, but they'll say, when you decided to do such and such, were you you could tell that, and I just die inside, like, oh, I could be home with my husband and I'm defending something I wrote 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
I can barely remember doing.
Yes.
That character's name was what?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And sometimes the readers know your books better than you do, especially if it is a book from the past. You're thinking, I don't even remember that section, but they'll make sure and let you know, especially with series, if you have something off. But all right, so you guys lead a lot of workshops and you do speaking engagements on the craft and business of writing. You also do one-on-one mentoring and coaching for authors. How did that get started?
So it was so fascinating when we lived in Connecticut. So Jim actually taught college before us going full time at writing. He taught college and he taught creative writing. When we were living in Connecticut, there was a group actually in Northwest Connecticut. There were people that wrote grants to state of Connecticut.
Yeah, it was a semi-government agency.
Yeah, semi-government agency that to bring creative writing into the classrooms. what happened was I was hired initially because Jim and I had given a number of day workshops to middle schoolers and high schoolers. And we had summer camps that we were giving that would, in a fun way, for creative writing. And they were quite popular. And then this government agency basically hired me. And I started first at just being a guest lecturer. Then I ended up running the program that for 9 months of school year, they would bring in 200 very talented middle schoolers that they would had to qualify for this from all public schools into this one seminar. I would hire, in addition to myself, 2 other guest authors, and we would run all-day workshops for them. 1 day a month we would meet, and it was fascinating to see these kids come to and have a chance to write and express themselves and have fun with it. And it wasn't a grade assignment. It was just for fun. And as part of that, this just took off. Then State of New York ended up hiring us for their teachers development program to go around State of New York and actually give all-day workshops to the teachers of how to bring creativity and creative writing into the classroom. Then from that, it went in that a lot of the parents of those children that they were taking our classes, they wanted their own time. So we were quite popular to giving. And I think all of it had to do with just making it fun.
But we've always had fun with our writing too. I mean, we've always enjoyed it. We talked earlier about writing on, in genres that we liked or that moved us, telling the stories we wanted. And Nikoo and I have always had fun doing it.
And I think the approach we had when it came to adults is that a lot of people, not everybody wants to be, yes, there are many people that want to be a published author and they look at it as an income potential, so forth. There are a lot of other peoples out there that they want to tell their story for different reasons, and there were many of those people we met over our lifetime. A doctor that for 30 years practiced, but he wanted to tell his story of, some of the amazing patients he had, around their, nurse that, she dealt with end of life hospice and what inspirational stories that came about. And all these people, they weren't looking at, I'm going to write a bestseller and go on Oprah, but they, independent publishing, it was really, but that's what they wanted. They wanted something that to capture. And these are some of the people we worked with too.
I love, Jim, that you mentioned how much fun writing is, because sometimes we talk to authors and they almost sound like they're anguished over it and it's such torture. And I've always thought it was fun too. It's still work and you have your days, but for the most part, I think it's the greatest job ever. Have you ever encountered a book that the two of you wrote that was more challenging, that stands out in your mind for some reason?
I think both of us, we have books that when one of us takes the lead, like there are many books we've written that 2 of us had equal parts in it. Like all our historical romances, 2 of us were equal parts to it. When there are projects that one of us takes the lead, there's a period of adjustment. Like even with the Westerns that Jim was, Jim is laughing. Period of adjustment is, that's it for today. Let's go for a walk. Let's have a glass of wine. Let's go out. No, but I think those are more challenging. When we were writing Westerns, it was more Jim's area. And with me, I was more story. So I had to continuously convince him that killing 20 people is too much. Let's kill 4. You still could accomplish the same thing.
Our listeners don't see this, but Jim is shaking his head no as she was saying that. He says 20 people dead is just fine.
When we started writing historical romances, there would be scenes where we would have sword fights between, battles going on. And Nikoo would say, she'd read a scene or a part of a scene that I had written, and she'd say, Jim, there are 6 people in that scene, and there are 8 heads that are rolling. So
Well, that
she's
brings up a good.
always censoring me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that actually is a good segue to this question. Are there parts of writing fiction that are easier or harder for either one of you? And I'm assuming they don't match up what those difficulties would be.
No, yeah, I think I'm more of a screenplay writer, and I to me is all, Jim kind of hinted at it before. To me, is all about characters. I mean, I had a big sign on Jim's desk for many years that read, "It's the characters, stupid," to just remind them.
The subtle, very subtle.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's Nikoo's middle name.
and and Jim is really, I love, I mean, give him that emotional journey, give him that emotional growth. I'm home. To me, it's all about characters. Jim is all about action. He really is. And we actually come to accept that. I'm like, okay, I don't expect you to make the reader cry. No, don't even bother. I'll take care of that.
And you know what? I can't write about Regency gowns. I can't do it. No matter how much research I do, I just.
So it sounds like you have no shortage of story ideas. You talked about taking walks and hashing things out. Do you keep track of story ideas? Do you jot them down for later, or how do you do that?
Yeah, my gosh, we have so many. We still both believe in actually grabbing a notebook for each idea, jot down the notes, and sleeping on it to see if 2 days, a week, a month is still with you. Because, between two heads, it's just there's so many ideas that go out. And for us, the test has been this: an idea that both of us get excited about. And a week from now, we still remember something about it and we want to add on to it. Because, I mean, seriously, with Jim is every book he reads, he wants to write one just like it. With me is the truth, Jim, isn't it?
Okay, I like cozy mysteries, and Nikoo won't let us write one.
And with me is, Tess was mentioning before about, the road and following a pattern and really staying within, some career path. We already have 3 pseudonyms that people know about. 6 pseudonyms in total, the other 3 that they don't even know about. And here we have all of this career paths. And at this point in time, I'm like, honey, let's just stick with one of these and move forward.
What writing advice would you offer to those just starting out?
I absolutely believe that one of the greatest books that to this day, came out in 1978. I still, to this day, I believe in it, is Artist's Way. If you're a writer, of course, everybody says that, and you got to do that. You got to read. You got to be a reader first before you're a writer. But my feeling is that whole idea of, with Artist's Way, it exercises your muscles that involves writing. 15, and the simplest way to summarize that for me is, you want to be a writer, and a lot of people say, I want to be a writer, I don't have time. I have young family, there's not enough hours in the day, there are all these shows, so forth. My feeling is when Jim and I started writing, first, at a time, we had 2 full-time jobs, 2 young children, and we cut the cable. And we never watched any TV, and we made the time. But anyway, with Artist's Way, I'm saying 15 minutes a day, grab a notebook and write in longhand. Go through and just empty your mind. 15 minutes. Next day might be 20 minutes, 15 minutes. More you do this, it's like exercising. It's like going for a walk. Then farther you could go. And it really puts you in shape of taking this journey and going on. Because years ago, I remember one of the first conferences we went, Nora Roberts spoke. And I remember sitting in the audience and hearing her talk. And at that time, she says, you need 3 things. You need talent. You need, a little bit of pixie dust, but you need to sit your ass in that chair. As only Nora could say that. And I never forget that,
So Nikoo recommended The Artist's Way. That's by Julia Cameron. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Do either of you have another writing book you would recommend?
Yeah, I think especially for people starting to write or trying to find a way to shape up their stories, there was a book by a woman named Linda Seger, Seger, and she wrote a book called Making a Good Screenplay Great. And it wasn't just about screenwriting; it was about storytelling. And I mean, she talked about the hero's journey, and she incorporated things from another book called Save the Cat, I think. These are books that are about storytelling, and they're about the craft of storytelling. I think having those, reading those books and kind of making them your own really be a great advice for any young writer, any writer in the middle of their career, any writer who's been
at whatever
it for a while.
stage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Karen and I are obsessed with how long it takes to write a manuscript. We get so many various answers. We want to know how long it takes you two.
We've done it anywhere from, actually the quickest we've done it was a month. We've done it. And it was like a 90,000 word manuscript. And of course, there were other books that we labor over it for a year. But we've done it in a month.
And the average, 6 months?
3 to 6 months, yeah. We are not really fast writers. I mean, today there are some amazing people that...
Incredible.
So much respect for them.
One of those is Tess Thompson.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know.
She puts me to shame.
I know. Used to be that I used to be saying, oh, yeah, you're so fast. And now I look back, I'm like, oh, my gosh, I have so much respect. And I think it's like for us, a big part of it also is that you just reach a level and you feel like the balance. I'm like, okay, I do want to quit every day at 3, But I was, first started, I would never quit. I was going 24/7, but it's just where you are.
There's stories about Hemingway, writing his first novel, Sun Also Rises, in 23 days. But by the time he was in his 60s, he was having a hard time finishing a short story. So, it's a very, it changes, I think. And like Nikoo said, based on balance and interest and yeah.
So the answer is, the weather. And the answer is Tess is young and talented, and we are like, oh, outside calling, let's run.
It rains a lot in Seattle, so
it rains a lot, and I feel like I got a late start, so I feel like I'm catching up, and so at some point I think I'll be like, okay, you're fine, like settle down, but I'm not there yet.
So when you write, do you have an ideal reader in mind? Do you know who your target audience is, or do you just aim to tell a great story?
We constantly talk about this. And this is such an interesting questions that in a sense that we've been, again, lucky enough that we've had readers from both, men and women that have read us. Right now, I could tell you some of our most avid readers that we have that have read every book we've done, that they just buy it sight unseen. They are equal numbers, men and women. And the men, some of them, they've been like Jim's and my pen pal for like 20 years. They just read everything. Number one reader for me is Jim has to be happy. And I know it's the same with him, because if he's not
Absolutely. I want you happy, Nikoo.
Because with both of us, if we are not, both of us, happy, that book not going to go anywhere. No. So that's our number one reader. Yeah.
And I was joking about it, but really, we write for each other for sure.
But at the same time, when it comes to our other reader, we want to make sure is appealing to both male and female readership. to me is there's no reason why men can't read romance. There's no reason why women can't read Westerns. It's basically, they're good storytelling. Why not? And there is certain things that, it could be a slight adjustment in our writing that would say, hey, a man might not like that. A woman might not like that. We are sensitive to that.
Is there a book or genre you're dying to write that you haven't yet?
I think Jim mentioned it.
Cozy mysteries? Is that it?
Well, they are hot right now.
Yeah, I love reading them. I tell you, but
Tess,
won't write them.
He's read your work. He has read your work.
Oh yeah, I just finished the teacher in 1910.
School mistress. Yeah.
Yeah, the school mistress. Yeah. That was wonderful.
I like to write at some point in time, like a futuristic type of a sci-fi. So yeah, still out there.
Well, that brings us to the next question. What do you read for fun? Is it a whole range of genres, or do you have a specific type that you like?
Yeah, I again, I enjoy the mysteries, but I also still go back and read classics. I'm a huge Dickens fan. I really love reading Dickens, and Nikoo will laugh at this because I'm drawn to him for this, but nobody created characters like him. He was just amazing, and it's very entertaining.
I love reading suspense thrillers, and especially the twistier they are. Like last year when Silent Patient came out, I probably gave 4 copies of those as gifts to people just because first-time writer wanted to support them. But it's just, yes, a good suspense thriller with a twisted that you don't, expect the ending. I love that. That's my cup of tea.
Do your sons or any of your family members read your books?
They do now. It's not that they're adults. Yes. Yes. Both our sons, they are now directly and indirectly, they work with writers, they work with editing and so forth. And
they do their own writing.
And they do their own writing. So it's very, now they do. Yeah. When they were, of course, children, we had a funny thing that when they went to college, there were a lot of girls that he met that had read the McGoldrick romances, and they were quite impressed that I think they might have read them first time when they got to college.
But getting your family to read your books is always tricky. But now, actually, I have 3 brothers who actually do read the westerns.
Nick James,
the Nick James westerns. So that's kind of nice.
And they read. I think they wrote Jan Coffey once. They read those.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
We should put in the show notes all of their pen names so that our listeners can look them up depending on what genre they're interested in.
That's great. Thanks.
So what book are you working on right now?
We have about 10 ideas, 10 notebooks sitting there to see which one will survive. We have one that is actually with our agent, that is a publisher targeted book, which is a straight women's fiction. But of these 10 projects, they are in a variety of, from historical romance to suspense, romantic suspense, to present day Western suspense. So we have to, which one of these notebooks we see will survive by next week, then that will be the project. But there's one project that is fully developed, has not been written, but is fully developed, that is with our agent right now.
I'm curious, you say when you talk about a notebook, is this just jotted down notes, or are they outlines, or are they character studies? What exactly is in your notebook?
Everything. We have everything. We have right now, in fact, behind, I know our listeners can't see that, but there is a 6 feet roll of paper behind Jim on that wall that has an entire book with every scene, every character, every turn in events, all jotted down. So, and that's a complete project.
And that was actually transcribed from a spiral notebook where we wrote down character sketches, their backstories. scenes, scene by scene by scene. Then we also fight about names too. So
Oh my gosh.
that goes into the notebook too.
I noticed that tacked on the wall behind you. And am I right? It's even covering up a picture? Like
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You're like, okay, we're not taking the picture down. It's just going right over it.
I thought maybe it was a mirror.
We've done that so many times. It is so funny. We just walk around the house. I mean, now our kids are grown up and they're not there anymore. And so we walk around, and if you're working on a project and we have these rolls and rolls of paper, and we just draw up and do a plot and then go over the bookcase, go over the walls. Last year was hysterical. Our granddaughter, 3 years old, was visiting us, and she sees all of our notes over everything. She starts drawing pictures and just sticking it on the wall, like everywhere. Like as she just walks around.
She's like, that's how it's done in this house, I guess.
That's right.
That's so cute. All right. Well, we have fun extra questions at the end. Do you guys want to just take turns answering them?
Sure.
Since we've got 10 of them. So, Nikoo, you can start. What is one food that will never get past your lips?
I'm going to answer that for Jim. Jim, nothing green gets past his lips.
Not big on the vegetables, huh, Jim?
I've been slandered. That's not true.
Is the Irish in him?
But I do hate okra. I have to tell you.
No, and everything green. So that's okay. Sorry, I cheated here. I answered for him.
And don't bring a pizza that has anchovies on it, because Nikoo won't eat it.
Okay, good to know. Next time we're at Nink, we will not be sharing an anchovy pizza. All right, who would play you in a movie?
I've actually been mistaken for Meryl Streep. I really have been, especially since living.
I totally see that. Yeah.
And me, Brad Pitt.
Also could see it.
Yes, definitely.
What superpower would you pick given the opportunity?
Me, travel speed of light. Wouldn't it be fun? I could just be visiting you guys right now.
Oh, I love that.
I'd like to be in two places at one time. I think that would be pretty cool. I could play golf all the time.
You'd be writing and playing golf. That would be perfect.
Yeah.
What's your biggest guilty pleasure?
Chocolate cake for me. Oh my gosh. I love chocolate cakes. And it's like, I could just live on them, but I can't.
I love playing golf on my phone. I feel very guilty that I do that, but I enjoy it.
That's a good one. Yeah. What's the worst job you've ever had?
When I was in college, we changed many jobs, of course, but when I was in college, I cleaned houses. And I clean houses for these, some of the neighborhoods that I clean houses for. They were quite snobbish people. If you've seen the show Made on Netflix, there was some reflection of that, of some of these people that didn't care that there's a college kid. Anyway, those are some of the worst jobs.
I was a bank teller for 1 week. It was horrible. I'm sorry, but I feel for bank tellers. So it was just the worst.
If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
Speak every language. I would love that.
Investing, finance, investing. I would be.
Oh, that's a good one too. Let's see. What's your favorite smell?
Sandalwood. For me, definitely sandalwood. Every candle in our house is like sandalwood. I hate it when somebody walks into the house and it says, "Oh, there's a theme here. What is that smell?" And they don't recognize it. I'm like, what's wrong with you?
I'd have to say honeysuckle.
But I'll buy the candle.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm supposed to say something masculine too. And leather.
Actually, honeysuckle and leather might be a good book title.
Oh, yeah.
Think about that one, yeah. What is the most terrifying thing you've ever done?
The neighborhood we live in has quite a few rattlesnakes on the trails that surround our. And the most terrifying thing was right after we moved here, our granddaughter was here, and we were out walking on the trail, and she was about 10 feet ahead of us, and our dog was right with her, and all of a sudden we heard the rattle, and I ran up And here was a 5-6 foot long rattlesnake coiled up, ready to strike. And I grabbed her and grabbed the dog and dragged them backwards. My heart did not slow down for about half an hour after that. It was terrifying.
That was the most terrifying thing I ever saw. And it was seriously amazing how quickly Jim reacted. And our dog is like 100 pounds. He lifted the child with one hand and the dog with the other to get it out of the striking range of the rattlesnake.
Let me tell you, nothing else would have made me run toward a rattlesnake except for my granddaughter.
Yeah, well, they always say that about adrenaline, that mothers can lift cars up and all that sort of thing. So I guess it's true.
He did it.
Yep.
Yeah, he did it. Yeah.
What's one thing you're really bad at?
Saying no. It's for years, Jim used to actually, like before I would go out to any, our boys growing up, every committee, every volunteer organization, everything, I always said yes. And that became our like joke, like to Jim saying he's going to tattoo no on my forehead before I leave the house. But yeah, ask me anything, I'll say yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. For me, it's going to sleep early. I hate to miss anything. I honestly, if I could live on 4 hours sleep, I probably would.
If you could live your life over again, would you want to?
No.
Very happy living the lives that Nikoo and I have lived.
And you're always looking for tomorrow. I mean, it's fun. It's always new adventure. Just think about it. You could come up with 15 more pseudonyms.
The fun never has to end.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so much fun. Oh, and actually Mittens has awakened from her nap to say hello.
Oh,
show
nice.
you her face now. She sleeps on my desk. She's not 100 pounds, although she is a little bit overweight.
And I see there's a cat behind Karen over there too, asleep.
That's right. Yeah. They like to hang out by us when we're doing our podcast.
Our dog is sound asleep at my feet here.
Aw, sweet. Well, we loved having you guys. We've been looking forward to this for months. So thank you for taking an hour out of your day. We know you guys are busy and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
We're really glad, Nikoo, that you didn't say no this time.
Yeah.
We would never say no to you guys. Never.
That's right.
You can say no to other people, but not us.
Yeah, not you.
Absolutely. No, this has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you
Guys.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Book, brought to you by authors Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and post a question in the comments section. This has been Behind the Book.